William Hunter lived in Tudor England during the 1500s. An avid learner and a great thinker, he learned how to read very quickly and soon was interpreting the Bible his own way. He did not agree with Catholic officials in the idea that the bread and the wine of the Last Supper were symbols of Christ's body and blood.
He was very verbal in his opinions, and the Church, feeling threatened, accused him of heresy and had him burned at the stake. He was 19 years old. And this is just one example of the way Protestants were persecuted in Tudor England and Huguenot France.
The Renaissance caused many great changes in society, one of them being that people finally decided to stand up for themselves to the Catholic Church. They were tired of being unfairly taxed, among other things, by the people they thought they could trust. This led to the Protestant Reformation, a period of time that changed the Christian Church forever.
The Reformation began when people started becoming more literate and began to think for themselves. They could finally read and interpret the Bible themselves, instead of being forced to believe whatever the church told them, and being tricked into doing things they didn't want to. It was started by a man named Martin Luther from Wittenberg, Germany, who created the 95 Theses about what the church should be doing differently. Some German princes caught on and created the church known as the Protestant Church. When people heard about this, they wanted to join this revolution. They wanted justice.
Soon the Reformation had spread to England and France. At this time, England was ruled by King Henry VIII. Because he wanted to divorce his wife, and because the Catholic Pope would not allow him to, he changed the official English church to Protestantism. When he died, his daughter Mary switched it back to Catholicism, the religion she was raised in. Because she believed so strongly in Catholicism, she ordered everyone who was Protestant to be persecuted. Mary earned the nickname Bloody Mary because of this, and now haunts countless elementary school sleepovers. People were prosecuted mainly for heresy. People who were discovered to be Protestant were burned at the stake. It would be tied to the stake, usually a long pole in a public place, so that people could watch and be warned of what happened to Protestants. The convicts would either be strangled before being burned so that they were not alive, or they would be burned alive. People who were burned are usually referred to as martyrs and sometimes saints. They are revered and respected for standing up for what they believe in to the point of death. Agnes Poten and Joan Trunchfield were two women who aided an imprisoned priest who was convicted for heresy. They provided him with food and tools for escape from prison and were prosecuted. They were imprisoned for 5 months, then burned at the stake. While being burned to death, they recited scripture. They are known as Marian martyrs. Thomas Hidden is widely considered the first martyr of the English Reformation. He was a priest who was convicted of heresy for distribution of forbidden books and being in possession of letters from the English exile. He was burned at the stake as well. Robert Glover was convicted of heresy and burned at the stake. He is considered one of the 7 Coventry martyrs. Lawrence Saunders was a priest who was convicted for preaching heresy to congregations. He was burned at the stake. Before being chained to the stake, he kissed it and said, "Welcome the cross of Christ. Welcome everlasting life." The Guernsey martyrs were perhaps the most fascinating of the martyrs. The 3 women, Catherine Coches, Perrotine Massey, and Guillaume Gilbert, were, surprise, burnt at the stake for heresy. John Fox, a historian and martyrologist, wrote that the women were intended to be choked to death by a rope, but the rope slipped and they were burnt alive. It is also written by Fox that Perrotine was pregnant when she was burning, and that the child came out of her and was saved from the fire, but the people were ordered to throw the baby into the fire as well.
Over in France, the Reformation took hold shortly after it began. Protestant ideas were especially popular among the poor and those in rural areas. The French Reformation was dominated by one group, the Huguenots. The Huguenots were largely Calvinist and despised by most of the Catholics in France, which made up approximately 90% of the population. The first major event highlighting the clash between the Huguenots and the Catholics happened on October 17, 1534. Overnight, Anti-Catholic posters were posted in Paris and 5 other French cities. One poster was even found on the door of King Francis I's bedroom. Being a Catholic king, this was a significant breach of security. A reward was offered for any information leading to the capture of the Huguenots responsible for this event, known today as the Affair of the Placards. The first person to be killed was a cripple by the name of Barthélemy Milon, who was burned at the stake on November 13th. A general edict encouraging the eradication of the Huguenots was issued 2 years later, on January 29th, 1536. The next major event in the persecution of the Huguenots was the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre. The killing was ordered by Catherine de' Medici, who persuaded her son and King of France, Charles IX, to demand it. Many Huguenots were gathered in Paris for the celebration of Henry of Navarre's marriage to the daughter of Catherine de' Medici. Catherine was worried about the influence Admiral Gaspard de Coligny, a prominent Huguenot, was having on Charles IX. As a result, Gaspard de Coligny was among the thousands of Huguenots killed on August the 24th, 1572. On August the 25th, a royal order was issued to stop the killing, but it continued. When Pope Gregory the 13th heard of the massacre, he was overjoyed, thanking God for the victory over the Huguenots. The persecution of the Huguenots ended for a time when Henry of Navarre took the throne. In 1598, Henry, then Henry IV, created the Edict of Nantes, in which he granted religious liberty to the Huguenots. Included in the edict was the freedom to worship publicly in specified parts of France, and a ban on the use of the word Huguenot, which was a derogatory term at the time. It also made Protestant pastors a paid position by the state, just as Catholic pastors were. It even helped restore Catholicism in areas where it had been interrupted, but it was still despised by the Pope. When King Louis XIV took the throne in 1643, he made every effort to persecute Protestants, especially the Huguenots. He did this by issuing decrees that made it increasingly difficult for a Huguenot to get a job in any profession, including government positions. He also gave monetary rewards to some Huguenots that reverted to Catholicism, but this only had a limited impact and did not change the minds of many Huguenots. And in 1685, Louis revoked the Edict of Nantes and implemented the Edict of Fontainebleau, which made Protestantism illegal, ordered the destruction of Protestant churches and schools, and caused more than 200,000 Protestants to leave France. This mass exodus both helped Louis achieve his goal of eliminating Protestantism in France, and made many leaders of other European countries turn against him as they dealt with the refugees caused by Louis' intolerance.